Well, such is the times that turncoats are no longer frowned upon. This week, I'm Pallavi Ghosh and my one take talks about Scindia factor. I'm going to be focusing on turncoats who've done it well with a special emphasis on Jyotiraditya Scindia. Now, when Scindia took charge as the Civil Aviation Minister, he was also actually sitting on the same chair which his father Madhav Rao Scindia has sat on. Now, Madhav Rao Scindia was always seen as a very good minister, whether it was a minister of railways or even when he was a Civil Aviation Minister, because that was a time when the Indian Airlines was facing a massive pilot strike, and what he had actually done is that he had imported several aircraft from Russia so as to offset the shortage of supply. And of course, he was, to his credit, went in as being a very good administrator. Jyotiraditya Scindia is also taking over charge of the Civil Aviation Ministry at a time when one of the biggest issues of them all is the selling of Air India. Now, in this COVID pandemic, most of the airlines, I would say almost all of them, are facing huge losses. Domestic travel, international travel may be picking up slowly, but it's still not there where it was earlier before the pandemic times. His challenge, of course, would be to see the turnaround, also ensure the sale of Air India, because that's one of the pet projects of the government, and also to reassure the aviation sector that all is going to be well. But that was not the only similarity he had with his father when he took over. His father too had actually quit the Congress party. In fact, he had floated his own party, contested elections from the traditional seat as an independent, and he was very much giving support to the United Front government when Deve Gowda was the Prime Minister. But he never became the Cabinet Minister. When Narasimha Rao, because of whom he also left, power diminished, Sonia Gandhi started holding on the reins of the Congress party, is when Madhav Rao Scindia came back to the Congress party, and he was there till his unfortunate death in an air crash. Madhav Rao Scindia's grievance in leaving the Congress party was pretty much what Jyotiraditya Scindia's was when he also quit the Congress to join the BJP. Madhav Rao Scindia felt he was being sidelined, there was just too much of politics within the Congress party, and there was a coterie who were actually trying to sideline him and in fact sidelined him. Same grudge of Jyotiraditya Scindia. Though in my interview he did not speak out so openly and he was very careful about not speaking out against his very good buddy Rahul Gandhi, but his angst and bitterness was very, very clear. For most of us who actually been tracking Jyotiraditya Scindia's career, his politics, when he was part of the UPA, he was a savvy face, and he was a part of what was called the Baba Brigade, or the people who were actually close to Rahul Gandhi. Rahul Gandhi, when he became the Member of Parliament from Amethi for the first time, he would be seen inside Parliament in Lok Sabha with his own bunch of friends inside Parliament, and one of the closest of them all was Jyotiraditya Scindia. In fact, very often you would see that when Rahul Gandhi would give his speech, Scindia would sit next to him, would goad him, would actually coax him, and also actually give him tips, which were often caught on camera on what perhaps he should be saying and what line he should say. In fact, when Rahul Gandhi gave his first reaction to the exit of Scindia, he told us inside Parliament that he was one such person and one such friend who had open access to his house. He did not have to take a prior appointment. In fact, Rahul Gandhi told us he did not even have to call me up. He could just enter my house. What went wrong? And how much of that is going to have an impact on Scindia's working style? Well, what went wrong, I think, was a couple of things, but the main trigger was when the Congress formed a government in Madhya Pradesh. It came as a bit of a surprise to many when Kamal Nath, who was the PCC chief at that point of time and who was seen more as a Delhi face of the Congress party, a central face, was actually chosen as the chief minister of Madhya Pradesh. Digvijay Singh, who's been the former chief minister, very powerful, very well connected with the people who matter the most, which is the administrative staff, the bureaucrats, he became the buddy, so to say, of Kamal Nath. They would say that if you want an appointment with Kamal Nath or get some work done, Digvijay Singh was a door to which you had to go through. I think all of this started having an impact on Jyotiraditya Scindia, and this is nothing new which I'm talking about. But it started building up on Scindia that at one point of time his power came from his proximity to the Gandhis, but today he was being kind of sidelined and pushed out and eased out from the very state where for generations the Scindias have been associated with. His father being a chief minister, ministers and MPs from the state. Jyotiraditya Scindia also contesting unended till the last elections, which he lost from his traditional constituency. So there was this sense within Jyotiraditya Scindia that why am I being sidelined? The coterie of Digvijay Singh and Kamal Nath was actually coming heavy on Scindia, and no matter how often he would reach out to his best friend Rahul Gandhi, nothing would change. Very similar to the complaints which were made by Himanta Biswa Sarma. In fact, when I'm talking about turncoats who seem to have done it big as far as the BJP is concerned, I'm quickly reminded of names of Suvendu Adhikari. The once just aide of Mamata Banerjee today became the giant killer because he defeated a sitting chief minister from Nandigram. The two of them are of course now embroiled in a legal battle, but that's a different story. Hemant Biswa Sarma, he wanted to become a chief minister all along, but he wanted to meet Rahul Gandhi to tell him that, listen, I cannot work with the working style of Tarun Gogoi. You don't make me the CM, but at least give me that kind of self-respect. Pity the fact that he got no attention from Rahul Gandhi. The rest is history. Today he is the chief minister of the very state on which Tarun Gogoi had an iron grip. He also fought against the son of Tarun Gogoi. That's destiny, and that's politics it's all about. So I'm coming back to Scindia now. So now why does it matter how well Scindia does? Is he going to push on the legacy of his father of being a good administrator? Well, I can say, because I used to follow his ministry very closely when he was a UPA minister, he was actually a hands-on minister, someone who would actually read the files, not wait to be told by Babu, please sign here. He would actually read the file, take it home, and he would then work on it very extensively. That is something which has stuck with him. Of course, he had a different working style. He was not considered to be very accessible. He was, many would call him arrogant, but the fact is that he was very reticent, would not open up, and very, very choosy and selective about the circle he would move around with. Does that work in the BJP, where the premium is of course going to be given on accessibility, and no one can be bigger than the Prime Minister over here, and your job has cut out for? In fact, there was a very interesting video and picture which we saw on the very day when the swearing-in was taking place, and that was when Jyotiraditya Scindia was actually being spoken to from the Prime Minister. It was a very short animated conversation, but very clearly a brief being given by the Prime Minister from a relatively young minister who he was appointing on what perhaps is the expectations for him. From the Civil Aviation Ministry, there are huge expectations because it's an infrastructure ministry as well, and the government is trying to come in on an economic recovery, and therefore what the Civil Aviation Ministry does will matter a lot. More than that, I think the tip-off also being given was, you cannot behave like a Maharaja over here. You are just a minister, you're an MP, and you have to be accessible to the people. Governance is most important, not the frills and fancies which come in being a minister. Will that be easy for someone like a Jyotiraditya Scindia? Now, I was going back in his comparisons to his father when Madhav Scindia went back to the Congress party and remained loyal. In that sense, many are condescending as far as Jyotiraditya Scindia is concerned. In fact, the day when he was being sworn in, I saw Srinivas actually tweeting out where there was a picture of the Maharaja, which is Air India, Maharaja Jyotiraditya Scindia, saying both of them are up for sale. Obviously, the attempt was being made to please Rahul Gandhi. Didn't go around very well with BJP and Scindia supporters. But this is something which Scindia will have to be facing a lot. What step he takes, how hard he works, how much is he able to deliver. Not just the Prime Minister who is going to be watching, even the Congress party is going to be watching, but they are waiting for him to fall and say, I told you so. I think it hurts Rahul Gandhi the most and the Congress party the most when someone like a Scindia, who had open access to Rahul Gandhi's home and heart, actually switched over to the BJP. Though he has not been very openly critical of Rahul Gandhi, not taking too many pot shots at him, but those occasional hurt or sense of bitterness comes out in the open. And Scindia exemplifies everything which the BJP always said they were against: a legacy, the Maharaja syndrome, a dynasty. But this time round, Scindia would have to prove to his detractors and also to the BJP and the Prime Minister that legacy may be legacy. You may be having a royal background, but at the end of the time, a minister will be known by the work he does and how much are you able to deliver to the party. He did in Madhya Pradesh. Before I start wrapping up, he did as far as the BJP for the Madhya Pradesh is concerned. His supporters won all the elections in by-elections. But the ministership is actually where his countdown begins. And thereby all focus on Scindia as he sits on the very chair his father sat, who proved his loyalty to the Congress party. This time round, Scindia would have to prove his loyalty to the BJP. Do give in your reactions. I'm seeing a lot of condescending criticism of Jyotiraditya Scindia, but many of them also understanding why many like him actually are forced to leave the Congress, because after all, how long can you keep on waiting? Do keep giving your reactions. We are going to be back with more episode next time also on One Take. Thank you so much for watching.